Well. Another week, another episode of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider, and welcome. As always, if you're catching this on a replay, video replay or something like that, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can catch this in podcast form. It is available Tuesday mornings on all major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, as such. So you can take this on the go and listen to it. You don't have to be tied to your computer if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. Just search Andrew Cooperrider in your search bar. And of course, as always, please like, comment, share. Please share to support us. Also, if you want to stay up to date with everything going on, go ahead, text Liberty. Text the word Liberty to 33777. Once again, that's text the word Liberty to 33777. We have some great topics for us today. So please make sure you're, once again, your like, comment, sharing. What topics do we have? Well, Jessamine County Republican Party censures Mitch McConnell. We've got two bills, first draft bills filed for the legislative session for 2022. Kentucky's Commission on Race hears from the Chamber, Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, about how racist the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce is. No, I'm not making that up. They made an actual presentation to the government that talks about how racist they are, and they don't even realize it. Also, as well, JCPS, Jefferson County Public Schools, brings back forced masking for the kids, and we will talk about that as well. So please, once again, give this the like, give it a comment, share, tell your friends about us and everything else, and let's dig into today's show. So Jessamine County censures Mitch McConnell. First, what is a censure? A censure is a public proclamation of condemnation. So basically stating here that the Jessamine County Republican Party believes, and it was all over the Mitch McConnell bipartisan gun control legislation, enhancing red flag gun laws. The Jessamine County Party, correctly in my summation, has jumped to the belief, or correctly has come to the belief, that red flag gun laws are unconstitutional. And I intend to agree with them. I've talked about this in prior podcasts, but red flag gun laws provide no true recourse of action. It's not criminal. It's not civil. What category does it fall into? You're not being accused of a crime. Instead, they take it away. Then you have to defend your right without, you're presumed guilty before entering because they take it away. Too much is dependent upon the judge. And so, there's a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about red flag gun laws, and they certainly lead to unconstitutional things. Let us not forget, this is the same government that wanted to arrest you for going to school board meetings and voicing your opinion, calling you domestic terrorists. And we want to give them the ability without due process to take away people's constitutional rights. I see an issue with it. It seems anti-conservative, seems anti-Republican. Mitch McConnell supported it, pushed it forward, and he's receiving a censure from the Jessamine County for his troubles. And so what this says is that, one, they're publicly saying we disagree with what he did. Two, they asked for his resignation, as I read it, and I could be wrong, so someone from Jessamine County can let me know. But as I read it and understood it, that Mitch McConnell, they're asking for Mitch McConnell to step down as leader of the Republican caucus in the Senate, not necessarily step down as senator, but step down as leader of the caucus, because he, of course, pushed forward this legislation. They correctly point out he's the only elected member to federal government from Kentucky to have supported this legislation. Rand in it, and neither did any of our Congress people. Also, as well, they say that the party will cease to support him in any future endeavors. And that really opens up a whole other debate. And I think this is really, really key. And this is where there's a slight, I guess you call it old guard, new guard kind of debate going on between the parties and within the party. And what I mean by that is what is the point of the Republican Party? So when this censure went in, some of the more, I guess you'd call them party men or what have you, quit. There's 3 resignations of the Jessamine County Party. One of them was the attorney for the Senate Republican Caucus Campaign Committee, and the other 2 married couple, just longtime Republicans that really believe that no Republican should ever speak ill of another Republican. And if you're in the party, you hear this all the time. You hear Rand Paul's 11th commandment, that never speak ill of another Republican. And it really opens up a debate on what is the point of the Republican Party itself. So the point of being a Republican, when you go down and you register as a Republican, is to say that you identify with the Republican Party platform, you believe in its values, and you are a member of that party, you want to forward that belief. Being active in the party itself. So that's registering as a Republican. So we're not asking what's the point of doing that. I'm saying, what is the actual point of your local party? Is it to just get Republicans elected? And what does that mean? Does it mean we're electing people who forward and believe in and exemplify Republican values and the Republican Party platform, including protecting the Second Amendment, to which I don't think it's necessarily super debatable that the red flag gun laws obviously go against the Constitution, because why is it that Mitch McConnell's the only person who voted for it out of all the Republicans in Kentucky at the federal level? Everybody else voted against it, if that wasn't the case. So is it the party's point? Is the party in existence to ensure that good Republicans get elected? Not just Republicans get elected, but is the point of the party to forward the Republican Party platform? Or is the point of the party to just elect Republicans? Because follow me here, there's a big difference. See, if you think the party itself's only point is to forward to get just Republicans elected, what that means is you're saying it doesn't matter what their beliefs, what their principles are, or anything else. All that matters is they have an R next to their name, which then begs the question, though, if you think that's the point, it does beg the question of, well, why does it matter? So you're just Team R instead of Team D. Does Team R stand for anything? Does it mean you stand up for anything? Does it mean that you believe in the right to life, protecting the Second Amendment? Does it mean you believe in conservative values, Judeo-Christian values? Does it mean that? Or does it simply mean you somehow have ended up in Team Republican? Because if it's just about getting people elected with an R next to their name, what the Jessamine County Party did was incorrect. And there are a few people, obviously the ones that resigned from the party, that believe that. They believe that the entire part of the Republican Party is to push forward people with an R next to their name, no matter what they believe in, no matter what they stand for. And then there's people who believe that the point of your local party is to forward the platform. Because it doesn't matter if you win an election if you're not forwarding the Republican Party platform. And then once we've answered that question, so I think that's the first debate you have to have. What is the point of your local party? The party itself. That anybody that gets into a general with an R next to the name, we have to support as the party. And if that's what you're saying as a party and what's that support look like, then that's what you're saying. Then I would say that censuring of Mitch McConnell from the Jessamine County Party was an incorrect and proper thing to do, because it doesn't matter what they believe in. It just matters what initials next to their name. If, however, you believe your local party is supposed to be forwarding the Republican Party platform specifically, that's what you think it's supposed to do. And a component of that is getting Republicans elected, obviously. But another part of that is making sure you're electing the correct Republicans that are going to forward your platform. If that's the case, then what Jessamine County did would seem certainly more proper, because the question is what is the point once again? So if it's about forwarding the Republican Party platform that believes in protecting the Second Amendment, then Mitch McConnell should have been censured. And it should come out and say this isn't a Republican Party belief, and what he did was outside the purview of his registration as an R. Because remember, that's all it is. There's no adjudicator that says whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. You just went down and filed the correct paperwork at the office. That's it. And so if I think that kind of covers the difference here of opinion. And there are people, like I said, the 3 people that quit believe if there's an R next to their name, I had to support them no matter what they believe in. And they even believe that in primaries, we have to support the incumbent. A lot of people believe that believe that same way. If we're in a primary, we have to support the incumbent because they're in office. And if we support anybody else in a primary, it's going to drive the party apart. It almost seems like a thought process those in power use to stay in power. Basically, come in, do our bidding, go knock doors for us, go do everything we want you to do, go fundraise to us, give us money, but you don't get a voice. That's the way it kind of comes across when you're saying you are literally not allowed to express any discontent with any Republicans at all if you're a part of the local party. I don't think that's accurate. I think generally people believe that it's about forwarding the Republican Party platform. I certainly do. And, while I wasn't in the room for the discussion on this specific censure, what I can say is that I do think it is. Is when it comes to the question of what is the point of the Republican Party. I definitely think there is a place for what we were talking about there. So there you go. A little bit of news there on Mitch McConnell being censured by Jessamine County Party. We have 2 bills filed already for the session here coming up in 2023. One by Jeffrey Donahue. Jeffrey Donahue here, and that is Draft Bill Request 21. It's a constitutional amendment, also called the Homestead Act. I will describe it to you here. One thing to note about Jeffrey Donahue, he's State House Rep 37. He is in a general election against Emily Callaway. That 37 was recently redrawn to certainly be more friendly to Republicans. So this definitely seems like a slightly conservative piece of legislation. However, for being a Democrat, it's very conservative. However, I think a true conservative would take it even farther. And I think that's where a breakdown and you don't understand the philosophy here. So what does the Homestead Act, what does Draft Bill Request 21 do? Well, you can see in its summary, it says proposed to amend Section 170 of the Constitution of Kentucky to include in the homestead exemption for owners who are 65 years of age or older from any increase in valuation of property taxes assessed after the later date of the year over the owner turned 65 or the year the owner purchased. So basically what it's saying is this, is if you're 65 or older, once your property gets valued at 65, it never goes up in value. You'll pay your property tax on the home value you had at 65. Or if you buy or sell your home after you turn 65 and you buy a new home, the property tax will be assessed based upon the year you purchased the home. Sounds great. Don't get me wrong. It's a step in the right direction, right? But it fails. It's weird. So you're recognizing that property tax reevaluating is crushing the homeowners, especially retired ones. You're even recognizing the fact that it creates a financial burden on homeowners to constantly reevaluate tax. You're almost even acknowledging that coming out and valuing somebody's property based upon pure speculation is wrong and immoral. And what I mean by that is this, is that when a person buys or sells their home, the market is speaking of what the value of the home is. When the property evaluators come out, they're making a guess based upon current market conditions. I'll give you perfect example. Over the last year or so, we've seen property valuations going up massively, creating higher property taxes. But now, as you have rising mortgage interest rates, the market pressure is lower, property prices will drop. Do you think people's tax bills, property valuation costs will be dropped down? Most likely not. Most likely not. And so the point is that this reevaluating of property value based on pure market speculation, I don't think is the role of government. I don't think government should be speculating on what the value of your home is. That is them saying, look, I'm going to guess what the open market believes your home's worth. the market hasn't spoken. And there's even legal law behind this that says some cases where individuals who recently bought or sold their property were then charged a property tax for more than they bought or sold it for. And they're like, look, that's not what the property is worth. If it was worth that, that's how much I would have gotten for it or paid for it or sold it for. And they've had to go back and retrace down what the property values are. But you shouldn't have to just sell your home for a lower price to say this is what the market said the home was worth. So I certainly think he's getting to a point, but he's failing. His point is he's making half a point. He's meeting us halfway, I guess, right? He's acknowledging that this continuing increase of property tax is immoral. Property tax is immoral and creates a financial burden. That's why he's reducing it for elderly, but not taking it further and just expand that out to everybody. Why not say, look, when you buy and sell your home, that's the amount your property tax will be valued on. And until you buy or sell a home, you're again where the market can make a decision, can make its point about what your home's worth. Until that happens, well, we can't up your property tax. And he's, like you said, he's taking half a leap without making a full leap. And he's literally, I think, only proposing this because he's in this election against Emily Callaway, and he's trying to appear more conservative, more even keel. But I think if anything, he betrays that he's acknowledging the moral issues with property tax and the way we do it now without going far enough to actually take care of it. Now, remember, this would be a constitutional amendment. So if this does pass or goes forward, it would then go into a ballot for us all to vote on. I'm sure it passes on a vote, but point is that it does halfway. But also at the same time, we don't provide tools of our county. That's when the counties only get like 5% though of their revenue from property tax. So it's for those that are like, well, what about the counties? It's not going to hurt a lot. Now the schools, on the other hand, they're going to have a big issue with this. It's nice. It's interesting to see a Democrat do that because schools will have a big issue with it because it will affect their ability to fund themselves because, of course, one of their number one funding sources is property tax. So be interested to see how that plays out and how that goes. Interesting to watch that House District 37 race. We do have another piece of legislation that has been proposed, Draft Bill Request 39 by Kim Banta. This would create a new section of Kentucky Revised Statute, Chapter 532, to define qualifying offense and also allow lifetime orders of protection for victims of qualifying offense. So basically, what this states is that, let's say you're the victim of a domestic abuse of some sort, and you go and you get a restraining order. Right now, you have to renew those. This would allow lifetime restraining orders, and I think, generally speaking, this sounds great, and I think it is a fine piece of legislation on its surface, but it does slightly determine the revisiting aspect of these restraining orders, though. Understand this. I think everybody agrees that if some guy was beating on his wife and there should be a restraining order in place to protect that woman from, after he served his time, being able to come around her, see her, things like that. I think that's very reasonable. I think all of us agree. None of us have an issue with that. None of us even have an issue with a lifetime restraining order in that situation. What I think we have to worry about or be concerned about is watch for the abuse. So it's going to be interesting to see what this bill actually comes out as far as redefining what is a qualifying offense and as such. Because I know people, I'll give you an example. I know somebody who he was a divorce. I think he was getting a divorce. He's getting a divorce. Kids. It was a custody hearing around kids. I know that. It was a custody hearing around kids. And the gentleman in question, he was an MMA fighter, not pro, but amateur MMA fighter. So he'd, as a hobby of his, he'd go to an MMA gym and he'd fight in the octagon some weekends, nothing too huge. Never had any convictions of assault, anything domestic violence, anything like that. Generally speaking, people who do get involved in the combat sports actually aren't that violent of individuals. And so he did not have any kind of history for this, but during the course of a civil hearing around custody, because we all know how this gets, there was a protection order issued, to a restraining order issued, because she somehow convinced the judge to issue it, despite her never being in the hospital, him never having any history of violence or anything like that. But because of that, they issued it. And so, obviously in that situation, now you're like, well, it's just a restraining order. Well, hold on though. That's also his kids. But also at the same time, if you live in a small town and the person who has a restraining order works at the grocery store, it's like you can't go to the grocery store now in your town. That could be a real detriment to your ability to operate. Now, obviously, if you're a woman beater, I don't care. Have a detriment to operate. Move out of town, move out of state. Let's get rid of you. You're a piece of trash, right? We all agree with that. But we've seen abuses of things like this. So it'll be interesting to see how it's worded, to watch for that. And that also goes into why our judges' elections are so important, because so much of our law is based upon what the opinion of some judge is. And I think you need to be a lot more careful about who you're electing at judge because of that. So I think that's also Kim Banta's law is interesting. I think it's worth debating. I think it's worth looking at what they call qualifying expense exactly in the final format, because remember, this is just a draft bill. And also looking at, what's the process for overturning a permanent injunction? Where is there a chance to do that or what have you? I don't know, because it's possible to overturn a restraining order now, but it's very difficult. So, does it make life unworkable? Does it make it to where you can't see your kids ever again? Does it do things in situations where a person has been misaligned by the system? Because it happens. It happens. We know it happens, right? I'm not saying I'm not saying that is generally the case, and I'm not defending anybody who's an abuser or anything like that at all. Like I said earlier, they're trash and they should go away. But we know that things like this happen, wrongful convictions, wrongful decisions, people lie, and that creates issues. So that's that on those bills. Now, here is a interesting point here, that the Kentucky Commission on Race. Now, some of you may not be aware that Kentucky Commission on Race exists. It does exist. It is a statutory committee of the legislature. It was formed during the 2020 legislative session, I believe. So Republicans created this Commission on Race. It exists, and they had a presentation recently from the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. So the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce is the state chamber of commerce, and in practice, you think it would represent business values. It kind of does, but it doesn't represent small business owners. It represents large corporations, because they're the number one people who give them lots and lots of money. And because of that, pretty much everything they propose is all about how do we get more money out of the government to go into industry. And they've recently decided they're going to they did a presentation about equity in Kentucky. And so let me see here. Let me show you some of these slides here to give you some idea of what we're looking at here. Here we go. Okay. So first, one of the slides they share is about underrepresented minorities in Kentucky. Now, what does that mean? Underrepresented minority? Because I don't often see that term. And so I said, what does that mean? Well, what's an underrepresented minority? Well, that is only people who are Black, Hispanic, or Native American. Let's say that again. It is Black, Hispanic, or Native American. Now, why isn't it Asian minorities? Why aren't Middle Eastern minorities in there? Why aren't certain European minorities, Jewish minorities? Why aren't all minorities in there? They're all minorities. So they come up with this term underrepresented minority, which you say, okay, what's that mean? It means that their skin color, that's what it's about, skin color, once again, is not being represented properly in the demographics. So they don't want to bring in Asian, Middle Eastern, or any of those, because they are not underrepresented in the demographics. They're outshining their demographics. Now, if we talk about that, that really throws a whole a problem into the whole gear spinning saying all white people are racist, because if all white people are racist, why is it that these other minorities are doing fine? You can't say it's because, well, Jewish minorities, they look white at least. Well, Asian and Middle Eastern minorities definitely don't look white. So if white people are racist, wouldn't they be doing bad? But no, instead, in order to make this fit in order to make the numbers look worse, and in order to make this fit your narrative, you just have to conveniently forget about certain minorities. And in this case, it's minorities that are doing well, better than even white people. We have to forget, because we need to make this about race. And if we bring up the fact that minorities other than, or skin colors other than white are doing just fine too, that undermines our entire message that white people are racist. So we've got to lie about it. And we do that by changing up our terms. Of course, we've talked about this before. Correlation does not mean causation. So just because somebody is Black does not mean that they innately have these situations or problems. Okay. What it does is, more likely these issues are more tied to, and we've talked about this before, geographical locations. Maybe it's historical racism that doesn't exist anymore that caused them to be in this geographical locations. Or maybe it's a cycle of choice making that has been spurred on by the welfare state of Kentucky, and the United States as a whole, that's tied to a geographical area. That's why I liked how Trump did it, where he said, we're going to create economic opportunity zones, because it recognizes that it doesn't matter what skin color you have. If you're from that zone, you're more likely to have the issues than if you're not from that zone, regardless of your skin color. But anyway, so they have to use this term underrepresented minority in order to make it work for their part of it. So then they say, so in Kentucky, underrepresented minorities in Kentucky have a lower medium wage compared to their white counterparts. The medium overall underrepresented minority wage is $36,600 compared to $43,400 for non-underrepresented minority. Underrepresented minorities with a diploma, average salary post-graduation is $29,000. I believe they're talking about high school diploma. Well, $33,400 for non-underrepresented minority. This goes back into geographic location, right? So it's not a big secret. And for whatever reason it is that typically in Kentucky, you're going to have an abnormal amount of white people living in rural areas compared to you're going to have a fair amount of Black Kentuckians living in the inner city areas. And there's certain jobs you can get in those rural areas that don't require a college diploma, such as farming, construction, other labor type positions that you don't typically see as much in the inner city area, where there's not as much economic development going on. And for that reason, for geographical reasons, it stands to say that they have different opportunities at higher paying jobs for people with high school diplomas that don't have college degrees. That's very likely a reason to it. But once again, we can solve that by if we're looking at geographically, we can solve that. Why aren't they calling for relocation assistance? Historically for America, it's always been about traveling to the work. It's all been about, you got to go out to the world and make your opportunities. And yet recently we've stopped that. And we don't talk about relocation assistance. Instead, we talk about, well, we got to convince people to build up businesses in an area. And the question is how do you convince people to do that when you've got a litany of issues, crime and other issues going on there, crime, utility costs, available labor. It's not a good situation that government has created in a lot of these positions. And I get some thoughts that say government's supposed to fix it, but government can't fix it because government's the one that created the problem. And it's because of government. So you can't fix government, more government. But anyways, regardless. So they kind of talk about the problem. And then they go on to say, well, let's dig into this a little bit, right? Let's look at our equity. Okay. So they say barriers that minority-owned businesses face. So this is why there's not enough minority-owned businesses. And this is why. Barriers from discriminatory behavior, agency and prime contractors employing capability stereotypes, double or higher standards, manipulating a bid process based upon prejudicial factors unrelated to business performance, systematic discrimination against minority business enterprises related to key market-based issues, including access to capital. So basically, now, anybody who's bid out, this isn't the government they're talking about. This is what gets really, really funny about them making this presentation to the government. The government has a very transparent bidding process. It is open to anybody that reaches the qualifications. The qualifications are simple. They're straightforward. They're the same for every person. And in fact, actually, you get a little bit of deference. If you're a minority-owned or woman-owned business, you get a little deference. So if I put forward a price for one of my companies, if I'm contracting for the government and somebody else puts forward a price and they're exactly the same way, the exact same amount of experience, but the other business is owned by a woman or a apparently underrepresented minority, they will get the contract over me. That is the decision-making process the government currently uses. So keep in mind, when they're talking about these barriers from discriminatory behavior, they're talking about contractors. They're not talking about business. They're talking about private industry. Okay, they're talking about private business. Okay. Double or higher standards. Once again, private business. Manipulating bid process based upon prejudicial factors unrelated to business performance. That's not the government. That's straightforward. Then once again, they're talking about private industry. Okay, this is from the Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Systematic discrimination against minority business enterprises related to key market-based issues, including access to capital. Who provides capital? Does government provide capital or do banks provide capital? Well, it turns out banks provide capital. Now, when we look at who supports the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, we find PNC, Westbanco, US Bank, Fifth Third, Chase, you name a bank, they're a contributor to the chamber, most likely, even local banks. And so the chamber is doing this presentation to the government about how racist their members are. They're not talking about the government being racist. They're talking about private industry being racist. The private industry they represent, why are they making this presentation to the government? It is you. You're saying you're the problem. So why aren't you fixing it? Why are you, as the chamber, turning to the government? If you're making that, follow me, okay? Hopefully everybody's following me here. The chamber is comprised of private business entities, and they're creating a presentation on how private business entities are racist to the government. Instead of, if they are all really racist, so they're saying they're racist instead of just saying we're racist and we should do something about it. Instead of doing that, they're saying, let's go to the government and talk about this issue. Now, why? Well, because, see, if it really is that they're racist, they can deal with that problem themselves internally. But that's not what the chamber wants. See, the chamber, much like other liberal organizations, which it is, the joke is we call it the Kentucky Chamber of Communism. What they want is to take more of your money and redistribute it out. Take more tax dollars and pump it into the private entities, private business owners. They don't actually care what skin color are because I don't think they're actually racist at all. I don't even think they're racist towards, some people would say, well, this anti-racism stuff is racist towards white people. I don't think they believe it. I don't think they believe anything they're saying. They're just looking for another excuse to spend more of your tax dollars for their private corporations. Let me show you. What are their solutions? So the solutions from the chamber, so solutions from the Center of DE&I, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. There's those communistic words again. Equity. It's powered by the Kentucky Chamber Foundation, which is a Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. You see that down there in the corner there. That DEI, the Center for DEI, is a part of the Kentucky Chamber. So they want a minority-owned business database. So they want the government to take your tax dollars and spend it on a minority-owned business database. The Kentucky Chamber has their own directory of businesses in Kentucky. Why don't they create it themselves? Why do they need more of your tax dollars? If they're the racist ones and that's what they're trying to solve, why don't they pay for it themselves? Because in their own directory, they have a directory. Why not add on a minority-owned business directory? Why are you going to private industry? Well, because you, or to government, because you want us to pay for it. You want us to believe you're racist, and you want us to pay to fix your racism. To you. Who are we giving the money to? Who's the money going to end up with? Oh, you. It's the greatest con around. They need a potential need for a disparity study in Kentucky. They don't want to expend their own dollars doing a disparity study. They want your tax dollars paid for it. They want the government. Keep in mind, guys, now as you're looking at this, you're saying, well, they're not saying they want the government to necessarily do this. Guys, they're making this presentation to the government. To the government. This isn't them making an internal presentation. They're asking people right there in that room at the time they're making this presentation, your tax dollars are paying for that room and those people to be in there. And now they're saying they want more of your tax dollars. They want to create a standardized DE&I training workshop for employers. Well, geez, I wonder at the chamber. Okay, so standardized diversity, equity, and inclusion training workshops. Who's going to create this standardization? The government? Is it going to become a government requirement to do that? Who's going to teach it? Will the Center for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, DE&I, the Center for DE&I teach the standardized DE&I training workshop for employers? What else here? We got the Minority Business Accelerator and Ignite program. So for those who don't know, a business accelerator is when a business is starting out brand new. Ignite programs are a new business, and you help get them funding, and you guide them, you provide mentorship. So they want to pick businesses, specifically businesses, to be in this accelerator, help them get them funding and everything else, based solely upon the skin color of the owner, not based upon the viability of the business, the need of the business, or anything else, but just the skin color. Racist. It's racist. That's racist. Who cares what the skin color is? What we care about is it a good business? Is it going to provide good paying jobs? Is it going to help everybody else out? We do care that the business isn't racist. But why are we so obsessed with what the color is of the person who owns it? Who cares? Who cares? Is money from a minority business generated by a minority business somehow more valuable than money generated from a white-owned business? Does those greenbacks spend differently? No. Why does government care at all? They should. I do not believe government is in the role of creating economic commerce to begin with. And for those of you who are Republicans that just heard me say that and say, well, government does have a role there, go read your own platform, please. The Republican Party platform states government does not create economic opportunity, but can only inhibit it. That is a belief we should have as Republicans. So if you're a Republican and you believe government has a place creating economic opportunity, you are not a Republican. You're not forwarding the platform. You've put an R next to your name and you believe in nothing that the party stands for. Not nothing, but you don't believe in something the party stands for. That's in black and white in our platform. But that's what they're asking for. They're asking for government to do something about their racism. I find that laughable. Laughable. Finally, Jefferson County Public Schools, that's Louisville, has decided to bring back enforced masking. Forced masking because they're in the red zone. They say if this continues, we will be, as long as they're in red, they'll be masking kids. Nobody else is masking. Nobody else, no other mandates, no state, no city, no other entity. But they will mask your kids. The group least at danger from the disease. The group with the least amount of fatalities, the group with the least amount of concerns. The group of kids, they're going to be the first ones we put under. And whether or not you think the efficacy of these types of maneuvers, these mandates work or not, you got to be asking yourself, why are we doing it to kids first when they're the least at risk? I think science left a long time ago. I think the people that think men can suddenly become women, and women can suddenly become men, and can identify as such, and believe in circular definitions, and have changed the meaning of a recession. I don't know if you saw that on my Facebook there that I posted the other day, where the White House is trying to redefine what recession means, because we're in one. And so they're trying to change the terms. I don't know if you'd trust those same people with the science on whether or not to mask up the kids, but certainly should have some pause. And this is why we fight. This is why we continue to fight. This is why we can't go away. You have the government you have because you tolerate it and you're unwilling to do anything about it. It's time to step up. It's time to do something. You can donate to my campaign at Andrew, the number 4ky.com. Once again, that is Andrew, the number 4ky.com. You can sign up for our text alerts, texting the word Liberty to 33777. Once again, that's Liberty to 33777. Thank you guys for joining me. Please share this podcast with others. Share it out there. Spread the word. I'll keep doing these as long as you guys keep listening. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.